1. We have one IT sage on site who supports about 100 users and has to jump to do the bidding of the owner on whichever person in manglement demands his attention. I've had an ongoing printer issue for the last month or so. I suspect that when it was last moved, no one paid the blood sacrifice or undertook the appropriate rituals, so now it has decided to cause hell. Essentially, it stops responding to my requests, and I use my limited knowledge and power to remap the path to the printer until the power of group settings banished my efforts, and I had to begin again. I did this over and over for about a week before contacting the IT sage because I'm an end user, and I fear the righteous wrath of an IT sage, but in reality, I didn't want to bug an overworked IT employee. After that week, I summoned up enough courage, dialed a missive to the IT sage covering the problem. My suspicions about the lack of a blood sacrifice and my extensive use of remap. Then 3 weeks or so proceed to go by. I see the IT sage out in the wild and approach him. I see instant recognition and perhaps a touch of haunted dread in his eyes as he knows I'm going to mention the printer. After discussing it, he tells me to remind him next week and he'll get it sorted. Or, as I was about to discover, he would attempt to empower me with the knowledge required to fight the demonic influence head-on. Aha. He sent me a missive with a portal to realms I hitherto, this point, had never attempted to cross. It was a link of sorts that would connect me to the elder gods that had created this fiendish machine. He also provided an image highlighting the cantrip, entitled Universal 2, that I would need to find in this realm and recite in order to potentially banish, or more likely, temporarily subdue the demon inhabiting the printer. I set out on my request, and due to the expert navigating provided by my IT sage, I was quickly able to locate the cantrip he had highlighted. I returned from the realm, cantrip in hand, ready to enact the spell. But wait! The spell had no starting point. All the words were there, but the elder gods had played a trick on me, and there was no way to execute the cantrip. I slumped over, but then suddenly sat up as I remembered a path I had long ago ventured on in my youth. The device manager. Surely it would be able to help me with this cantrip, and execute it where I had failed? So off I went. Pointed out the problem printer to the device manager, showed it the cantrip I had sorted on my desktop, and begged for its aid against the printer demon. The device manager, long tired of fiendish printers, was more than happy to help, and away it went, until it too failed. For you see, the elder gods had one more trick up their sleeve. The cantrip was unsigned. The device manager was powerless to continue reciting the cantrip, and all was thought to be lost. I slumped in my chair. I thought long and hard. Surely the IT sage hadn't led me astray. He had often fought printer demons and was a seasoned warrior of this battlefield I had only just ventured onto. So I gathered my courage and decided to again venture into the realm of the elder gods. Maybe they had hidden the correct cantrip, or disguised it to trick me into recovering the wrong spell. For if printer demons are so common, must it not be the elder gods themselves who imbue the printer with demonic energy when it is created? Again, I followed the link that the IT sage had provided to give me access to the hellish realm of the printer elder gods. This time, I stopped and took stock. Yes. Over there was the Universal 2 cantrip I had found before. But this time I avoided it, knowing it to be a trap for the inexperienced. I delved deeper, seeing monstrosities that I shall not mention for fear of bringing them upon myself. At last, though, I found what had been hidden. A new cantrip. Universal version 4. I exclaimed in joy, for this must be the answer to my problem. I hastily claimed the cantrip and fled the realm of the elder gods back to the safety of my desk. This time, when I opened the cantrip, the point from which to execute the spell was immediately apparent. Thus I began the incantation, targeted the correct printer, and let loose the spell. Suddenly, with a blinding flash of light, the printer demon was subdued. The cantrip ended with a request to print test page. With bated breath, I confirmed this action and waited. Then the printer sprung into life with a squeaky cry of joy and happily churned out a single, solitary test page. I gleefully told the IT sage of my adventure into the Elder God realms and the battles I fought. He responded promptly, thanking me for regaling him with the tale and praising me for my ability to tackle the demon head-on. Thus the printer demon has been defeated. How long this newfound peace will last I do not know. However, I shall stand vigil and attempt to protect this printer from future demonic incursions, until the next time I am called to action. 2. While I did work in tech support in a cell phone call center for 5 months, a special level of hell. I have never been official tech support. I've usually just been the guy who knows computers and gets tasked with taking care of everything that the powers of B don't want to call the professionals about. So I'm doing tech support, but I'm not tech support. For the most part, which can be inferred soon, I hope, I have nothing but mad respect for civilian tech support. In all of my civilian jobs, I'm usually the guy that had to translate between the staff and tech support because most end users can't articulate the actual symptoms and or problems well enough to let you guys know your jobs efficiently. But there are plenty of stories about that here already. Anyways, in a past life, I was in the Air Force, but my job had me living and working with the US Army. Back in 1996, I was deployed to Bosnia as part of a multinational Division North, and I got stuck working at the Division TOC headquarters, where I had to take care of all the Air Force computers, basically a couple desktops and maybe a dozen laptops at subordinate units. Kind of a weird setup, since the equipment belongs to the Air Force, but the network is the Army's, and if we needed real IT support, well, that was Army as well. Now, by this time I'd already hunted down and eliminated a nasty virus on all our computers that the Army wasn't completely aware of. They were losing computers left and right on the unsecured network, but they didn't know why. That's another story, but I mention it here because I had a bit of a rep now. First off, believe me when I say I'm no computer genius. But back in '96, I was able to put my head down and figure things out when I needed to, and honestly, I think a lack of formal training was more a benefit than a hindrance. Since the office I worked at was manned 24/7, I was one of the lucky guys who got to rotate between swing and night shift manning the radios. I was maybe halfway through sleeping after a night shift when I was ordered to report to my commander's office because his computer wouldn't start. Evidently, the newly formed J6 guys, communications, basically the Army's tech support, had spent 3 hours trying to get the computer to turn on and were unable to do so. I was pretty pissed, and I'm 110% certain that nobody looking at me could tell since I have the opposite of a poker face. The Major is upset his computer isn't working, but what does he expect me to do about it? I mean, the frickin' Division IT guys looked at it, no matter what their actual title was. Fine, I'll humor the guy. I'm already here and there's a bunch of officers standing around staring at me. I flip the switch, and I'm greeted with the warm black glow of the CRT monitor turning on, before I see a single fluorescent blip in the top left corner of the screen, before the computer simply powers off. Total boot up to shut off something like 3 to 5 seconds. Now I have no frickin' clue how to get into the BIOS or anything, so I do the only thing that occurs to me, something I've never seen in the manual. I lay my entire arm down on the keyboard and cycle the power switch. I get the same powered black screen and green blip, but this time, after the blip flash, the computer's BIOS starts up. By pressing so many keys on startup, I introduced a BIOS keyboard error, and it started up so I could address the issue. From there, it took all of maybe 10 seconds to see that, somehow, the computer it should get its operating instructions from the B drive, and when there was no B drive present, simply turn off. A couple mouse clicks and a save and reboot later, the computer was once again running off of the C drive. I just told the Major I was going back to my cot to finish sleeping and topped it off with a, "Really? You woke me up for this?" My total time at the computer was less than 30 seconds. 3. 3 years ago, I joined a company as an associate network administrator. The pay was pretty lousy, but I was unemployed at the time and I hate ramen. This is a quasi-tech company with the sole distributor rights for the massive printer company that everyone hates, but every business on the planet has or has had one of their printers. Selling said printers means also servicing said printers. I was brought in with the above job title, but expected to fix said demon printers too. 1 month after I joined the company, a guy in my department quit. His main role, provide third-party tech support for local banks' credit card terminals. Guess who got stuck with the role? No, go on, guess. Nope. Oh, alright, it was me. 3 years later, I only vaguely know the names of the software we use internally, and have a general idea of what our server room looks like. We have one IT guy. He shares no knowledge and pretty much just wants to do everything himself. But he has to go on vacation sometime, doesn't he? Cue today's story. 2 days before IT guy goes on vacation, my boss informs me that I'm to take over whilst he's gone. What the fuck? Anyway, I spend the next 2 days begging him to show me stuff. I was taken into the server room where he pointed to the servers, vaguely mentioned what they were for, gave my user account admin access, and poof, he was gone. Week 1 rolls around, issues come up, but I do have experience, so I muddle through. I occasionally have to text IT guy about small things, but I'm handling it. Until it's announced that a hurricane is coming our way. I'm in the Caribbean. Shit. Manglement has a meeting. Tell me to shut off everything. Was already planning to do that. And they tell the users to unplug all their equipment and place any towers that are currently on the floor on their desks. I'm not sure how putting a tower on your desk when you're on the second floor is going to save it. If anything, water comes through your ceiling and takes the machine out anyway. But whatever, manglement will mangle. The storm blows through. Lots of damaged property, but the island mostly lives to see another day. It's the weekend, so I go in on Saturday, bring all the servers back online and wait for Monday. And here, folks, is where things get crazy. These are just a few of the problems I had to solve before 10 a.m. 1. My phone isn't working. Walk upstairs, plug network cable into phone. 2. My computer has no internet connection. Walk back upstairs, plug network cable into computer. 3. The printer isn't working. Walk upstairs again, turn the power switch for the printer. 4. My computer isn't powering on. Walk upstairs again, turn on the power switch for the computer. 5. I can't hear anything from my phone. Walk 5 minutes to the warehouse to restart a phone after asking them to do it, and they said they had. Users lie. 6. I can't log into my email. Walk upstairs. Put in the password I just told her that I had set it to, and she insisted wasn't working. New employee, maybe she's nervous. Whatever. And the real problems? 2 users can't get a network connection. Their ports under the desks are labeled, so it should be easy to find them on the switch, right? Well, true for the first user. Pulled her cable from the switch, stuffed it in a different port, phone lights up. At this point, I don't care to know why it wasn't working. I don't even have access to log into the switches. The second user, I find her port on the punch-down block. It's empty. Oh boy. Maybe IT guy had to troubleshoot at some point, moved her connection, and didn't remember to relabel. This is going to hurt. Grab my tracer, dead battery. Scream that the warehouse has no batteries. Boss runs across the street to the hardware store to get me one. I may or may not have threatened to quit whilst asking for a battery. After much struggling in a tight spot that Ant-Man would struggle in, I find her connection, leading to the empty port. Yes, her cable was punched into the port on the block that had no connection going to a switch. What the fuck? go back to the user's desk, crawl around under there looking for another port, cause there has to be one, right? Right? Nope, none. Asked the user if she was recently moved to that desk. Nope, been there for months. Ask if she's sure that this is where the cable was connected. Yep. That's where she unplugged it from before the hurricane. What? I even looked around under her neighbors' desks. Maybe her cable was plugged in under one of those with an extra port. Nope, everybody has one. At this point, I'm cursing everyone who calls asking for my help, under my breath. I find the patch cable, humor myself, and plug the phantom port into a switch. Any switch. Guess what? Phone lights up. What the fuck? How has she even been working? At this point, I stopped caring about how or why. It's now midday, and I have had it, so I leave for lunch. After lunch, I come back. There's an email waiting for me with a problem I've never seen. Ask IT guy. He says check XYZ's server. I check. Looks like I forgot to power this one on. Whoops. 4. Backstory. I work at a bank, overseeing deferred electronic fund transfers. That is to say, these transfers are not instantaneous. These transfers are pulled together and settled periodically after a time window. I don't suck at my job, but over the last 3 years I've been subjected to piss-poor performance reviews due to a botched employee review system. Basically, my department has a substantial number of employees, and number of years in service gets a huge mark in performance metrics. That's where I come at the bottom. I've spent long enough fixing other people's fuck-ups, and I've seen those same guys, seniors and juniors, not in my department, getting promoted. But I digress. Recently, my bank launched interbank electronic transfer through the official Android app. I know we're still living in the Stone Age. Therefore, any dispute that couldn't be solved by the point of contact would get escalated to me. Although I usually don't have to deal with yelling customers, reviewing every unsolvable dispute takes significant work hours. Incidentally, 99% of those disputes are actually non-issues. These disputes arise mostly from poorly informed customers not understanding the new service. So one such issue was escalated to me today. Customer had issued a fund transfer instruction through the new Android app, from his account to another bank account on a public holiday 3 days ago. They later called CC to complain that the fund hadn't been transferred to the other bank's account. Upon digging, I discovered that during this holiday, the central bank had taken their switch offline, and loads of XML instructions had piled up as a result. Our IT guys had pushed the XMLs when the central bank switch came back online. But the switch buckled under the pressure. Every other bank was doing the same thing. Therefore, the mentioned instruction did not get through to the receiving bank until the next day. After that, the fund was rejected by the receiving bank due to invalid account number. The fund rebounded to us, and we had in turn refunded to the customer the following day, today. I laid out everything as clearly as I could and closed the ticket. So I thought. An hour later, the deputy of Complaint Management Cell was on call with me. Now these guys are dreaded throughout the bank because if they got you, there will be no write-up or anything. You'll simply get a termination letter as soon as HR could sign it. Anyways, the Complaint Cell executive informed me that they forwarded a complaint email from the aforementioned customer to me. They also sounded fairly panicked, and I understood why after opening the mail from the customer. The mail was CC'd to the central bank's complaint cell as well, and many heads would roll if the central bank got involved. At this point, I have a job waiting for me. Ironically, it's teaching English. It's half the pay, but far better job security. So I thought, F it, and went to reply to the mail. As I was plotting the best counterattack, I noticed a tiny detail. The customer mail actually mentions that they had issued the transfer instruction to a Visa debit card number. That explained why the receiving bank thought the account was invalid, so I replied, "Dear sir, we found that customer had initiated a transfer request on a public holiday. The XML was sent to the central bank yesterday, rejected by the receiving bank on the same day due to invalid destination account number. Refunded to customer account after central bank refunded us today. It's been our experience that receiving banks do not usually accept Visa debit card numbers as a destination account number for electronic transfers. The cards are usually linked to a checking and savings account. Customers should always use that checking and savings account number for the fund transfer process. Otherwise, fund transfers might get rejected by the receiving bank. That's it, folks. Rant over, waiting for the fallout tomorrow, but I suspect there won't be any. Unless the central bank guys butt in. Update. So I dug a little deeper and found something concerning. Remember that the instruction was created by the customer 3 days ago? It looks like this instruction, along with many others, should have been processed on the next day, but failed due to the downtime in the central bank switch server. The XML files containing the instructions landed from the app to our server through end-to-end encryption, got decrypted, waited to be uploaded to the central bank switch feeder server unencrypted, then timed out. Then on the next day, the boys at IT braved something dangerous to feed these XML instructions to the switch server. They opened about 1,000 of them in a text editor and changed a date tag to match the current date. Otherwise, the switch server would not have accepted the files. They had the blessings of their manager, of course, but didn't have it in writing. It is scary because manually editing the XML file is a big no-no here internally. If you started editing the XMLs, you could not only change the dates, but also change the receiving bank, account number, etc. Potentially directing the fund transfer instructions to your own account somewhere. All files get encrypted after getting uploaded to the switch feeder, a server at our premises, connected with the central switch, but before that, well, it's a security risk that's been bothering me for a while. I understand why the IT boys did the date manipulation. Had they let it slide, potentially 1,000 fund transfer requests would have gotten stuck in a vacuum. Customer refunds would have been taken sometime after a catastrophe of such scale. This would have been a pretty bad situation for all parties involved, including overcharged credit cards for customers and the like. Managers writing to change the dates would have shielded the IT boys from any fallout, but what's done is done. Our internal compliance has brushed the original issue under the rug since the customer got a refund. They've also fed them, customer, a few lines of the terms and conditions, which absolve us completely. I've covered my back by sending a detailed report of what I found to the compliance. Between compliance and myself, we verbally agreed not to harass the IT boys for their bravado for now, unless some sinister misconduct comes to our knowledge. Additionally, we've decided to remain tight-lipped about the internal policy of no XML editing to the outside auditors for now. For all I know, other banks do it all the time, and they are shamelessly frank about it. It's the central bank's fault that we cannot feed end-to-end encrypted XMLs directly to its switch, as the switch feeder server does the encryption. And I know most of you have guessed it already, the encryption algorithm is proprietary for security reasons. Pointing this out to their own auditors would be impolite, no? Update 2. So I've compared, double and triple checked every manipulated XML file with its previous version now. Every bit of information except the date field seems to be untouched. That's a huge relief for me. However, I've given a stern warning to the IT boys and their manager. If something like this happens again without our written consent, they'll be out looking for a job. I felt bad about doing this because they've probably saved me from a real shitstorm that was heading my way. Still, this is the finance sector, and certain precautions are necessary. You cannot get away with stealing public money unless you're a big fish. If the central bank auditors do some swinging at us, they'll probably find nothing to strike at. Nobody has broken any regulation or law. The auditors are more concerned about embezzlement and fraud anyway, neither of which has happened here. 5. Recently, we had an outside company come in and do an audit of access control throughout the building. So they sent in their big-brain tech to come and point out where the electrical hazards were, in regards to wire gauge and safety features, from an electrical code standpoint, and where the access control hardware was installed incorrectly, etc. It took a while, like hours and days of running around with a ladder and flashlight, but they finally compiled and sent in a report of their findings. We were emailed a link to a PDF This fucking beast of a file was just under 750 megabytes. Do you fellow nerds ever normally run into PDFs that are this massive? I'd love to hear it. I've never dealt with one quite that large for any normal reason. It was easily 2 or 3 times the size of the biggest PDF I retain, which is a giant digital tool manufacturer catalog. My boss said he could not open it on his computer, so I told him I would look into it. So, I set the thing to download from the site, came back and opened it later. It was several hundred full-page, full-color phone pictures, along with like 20 pages of text. Now, I cannot fucking stress this enough. Printing these pictures has no value to anyone in the company. It was just the insides of several access control metal boxes. You don't need to make a damn coffee table book out of the shit. It's just piles of circuits, boards, and wires with no labels all jumbled together. It's a long, detailed story about the value of the photos. And I'll spare you the sermon, but my tech support brothers trust me on this. These fucking pictures do not need to be printed, and nobody will miss them. So my boss calls me back as fast as his fingers can dial the extension. Do me a favor. Send that to the color printer upstairs. No problem. This guy just loves sending shit to the color printer, let me tell you. So I did just that, straight up. FYI, it's one of those huge printers that comes right up to your tits. As the infernal contraption was churning away up in the ivory tower, I selected the entire contents of the PDF, copied and pasted them into a text file, and emailed that to him. I thought this would be helpful. All the relevant info you can share in 20 kilobytes. None of the 50 tons of digital fucking diarrhea. This reduced the file size by around 99.9972%, but he would never have noticed or cared. He comes trotting down to the printer with this near 2-inch thick stack of papers, prattling on about how this can be shown to the electrician or something. I never thought much of it. My mind is still reeling from trying to figure out why he wants that dumb, worthless bullshit printed off. So the end of the day comes. I go home and it's the final day before a quick holiday. And what story do I hear when I come back next week? Apparently, this 740 megabyte PDF mangled the printer queue. So it printed once, then apparently, the printer thought, oh, this item is still in the queue, I'd better start it again. So it did. Now somehow, magically, this kept happening. And we are shut down during the pandemic. So there are only very scarce few managers upstairs to hear the printer yelping that it's out of paper or toner. Well, what do you know, they just kept feeding paper into the tray and pressing continue. I guess this went on for a few days until finally the other managers called my boss and were like, are you done printing this giant manual? Other departments have to use the printer, you know. So my boss went up there to see what was going on and saw the murder scene. Apparently, IT had to be called to basically kick the cord out of the big printer because it was possessed by Satan at that point. I think the IT dude said that the file had printed itself over 40 times. We now have a stack of pictures of circuit boards that rumored to be fucking near 3 feet tall. Nobody has ever seen the entire pile of paper in one room. I'd estimate 2 decades worth of scrap notepaper for the department. All of this for pictures nobody cares about, and notes you can't share in an instant. Unfucking believable. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Terrific Tales of Technology, number 14. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do click the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. That is greatly helpful to both me and the channel. Okay, we're at about midweek now, heading there, and my brain is melting. I believe I've stopped making sense at this point. I do know we're in for a bit of a heat wave. Well, we're already in the heat wave, I suppose. Allegedly, it will get hotter. Which, yeah, fine, I don't mind a hot summer, as long as everybody that needs to be taken care of is taken care of. And, of course, it is important, when remembering, that if you check the temperature in a particular country and you think, they call that hot, it's hot for them. Different countries are prepared to deal with different sorts of weather. Different infrastructure. And in the UK, well, we get good summers now and again, but it's not a guarantee. We're much used to colder, more miserable weather. So I'm just enjoying the sun while it lasts. Much as I can, anyway. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.